y'all? I'm kicking into my bedroom again, chatting with you all. So, we've been having this conversation about mass extinction over the last few days. And the conversation of apocalypse has always been interesting to me. And I've always been sort of directed towards such conversations, in part because I'm a Scorpio, and in part because I think that it really speaks to sort of deepest parts of us, right? That the core desire to live, that physiological desire, drive to live, and the ways in which, particularly the way that we are oriented in the world right now, seems to be operating in antithesis of the biological impetus to live. Because we are definitely like putting ourselves on what feels like a fast train to extinction. But so anyway, here's the conversation that my sort of part 3 of this conversation about humans and mass extinction, because I feel like one of the things that comes up in this conversation oftentimes is that it, make people feel like, oh, it's just, like it doesn't work, or like we're never going to get past this. And so there's a bit of nihilism again that lives in this, a bit of like, oh, well, fuck it. I'm just going to, be kind to my neighbors and do what I can, and we'll see what it is. And so this conversation, and oftentimes my conversations are directed towards white people. One, because I think white people have the biggest amount of fucking work to do. And that white people's work is in the way of people of color and indigenous people's work. That when we try to do our work, whiteness comes in and shits on it. And then consequently, we're buried under white people's shit. And so I'm often talking to white people because we need y'all to get out of our way. And the only way to get out of our way is to heal your whiteness. And so in this conversation of mass extinction, one of the things that comes up is like, is there a solution? What can we do? Which I would offer, I feel like is white people, y'all ask that question all the time. Like, what can we do? Which I think is fascinating because white people have figured out all kind of shit. White people have figured out how to, how to move entire races of other people across the Atlantic Ocean for free labor. White people have figured out how to forcibly remove indigenous people from their lands and make them walk hundreds and thousands of miles to other lands and die in the process so that they can take over their space. White people have figured out how to make a goddamn nuclear bomb and then drop it on Asian countries. White people have figured out all manner of shit. But when it comes to trying to figure out how to get us out of the mess that whiteness has created, white people are often confused. And so here's what I want to say about this that I think is the most important thing for me to say, particularly to white people who listen to my messages and who have been listening to this conversation about mass extinction is you absolutely do not have any space, right? If you want to be on the right side of history, what you do not get to do is be like, there's no solution to this. Oh, well. Abso-fucking-lutely not. And I just feel like very adamant about that if ever there were a group of people that get to wash their hands of the labor of trying to figure out how to undo the calamity and dumpster fire that the world is in, it ain't white people. It is not white people who benefit from the privilege of whiteness and whose white supremacist capitalist ideology have gotten us to where we are. The function of colonization is how we ended up here. So white people who are interested in divesting from the system of white supremacist ideology and all of the trappings that have come along with that, your assignment, your life assignment right now in these apocalyptic ass times is to figure out how you divest from a system of white supremacist hetero-capitalist patriarchy inside yourself and in the world. If ever there were a time in life where it is time to be a white traitor, it is right now on the brink of apocalypse. It is not enough to be like, well, I've gone vegan and so I'm good. Fuck that. If you are not actively involved in anti-racist organizing, if you are not actively involved in leveraging your privilege to topple, disrupt, and disturb systems of power, you are absolutely sleeping at the job, pumpkin. You are asleep at the wheel. If ever there were a time for white people, regardless of how much apocalyptic anxiety you are sitting with right now, it's time to turn that anxiety into labor. Because people of color, indigenous folks, disabled folks, fat folks, people who are living at the intersections of marginalized identities have been figuring out how to work through apocalyptic anxiety for the entirety of our lives, because whiteness is nothing but an apocalypse. Whiteness has been nothing but an apocalypse to people of color. And so your assignment, white, able-bodied, cis-gendered person living and benefiting from the system of capitalism and colonization, is to be about your business of dismantling that system inside of you. And so this is why the language of ally doesn't work, right? Because it's passive. It's like, I do things if something presents itself. Fuck that shit. You need to be making shit to do. You need to be at your job chaining yourself to a desk asking why the board is still all white. You need to be with a collective of people shutting down banks that have given out faulty mortgages. I don't understand. Every organization tied to a company invested in the Amazon fire burnings right now, you all need to be outside their buildings with bull horns and handcuffs chained to yourselves and chained to the building. If ever there were a time for radical action from white people, it is on the brink of this apocalypse that whiteness has created. And so I just wanted to be really clear about that. The assignment right now, white people, is for nobody should be working harder than you right now to divest from the system. Nobody. And again, y'all have figured out everything else, figured out all kind of shit. Throughout history, white people have figured out shit, oftentimes to the detriment of humanity. It is time to figure out some shit in service of humanity. That's your assignment in these apocalyptic times.